Happy Tuesday, everybody. Mitchell Hora here. I'm the founder and CEO here at Continuum Ag. Joining you today from the Little Apple, Mountain, Manhattan, Kansas. Got events out here in Kansas today. I've been running all over the countryside, spreading the word, trying to educate folks as much as we can, and make sure that everyone's ready to rock and roll when this CI thing really hits, and share some of those insights here today. That's what we're hearing from being out and about, and make sure that everyone's ready to rock and roll. I'm flying solo here today. Got a couple questions, a couple topics I for sure want to hit on, but put any questions that you've got in the chat, or some of you, if you want, could probably bring on the camera here too and ask a question live for the group if you would like to. So, but like we always start, I know we got a lot of new folks coming on and continue to get new folks registered every single week. So appreciate that. For all of you that are new to this, we do the CI Chit Chat every single Tuesday morning. We've got a ton of content on the Continuum Ag YouTube page and the Topsoil podcast. So be sure to share or look back on any of the old content that you've missed. All of our content's always put on our Continuum Ag YouTube page. Trying to be as public, as open as we possibly can. And because really this is about awareness and about educating folks. The main topic is CI. What the heck is CI? CI is carbon intensity. It's basically the metric of measure for the energy space. We're specifically talking about biofuels and looking at biofuels versus regular fossil fuel and such. And the unit of measure to compare the carbon footprint of each of these different fuels is in regards to carbon intensity, essentially the carbon footprint per gallon or per unit of energy, which is in this case per megajoule. On the farm, we can measure our contribution to that carbon footprint, or to that carbon intensity, with the Department of Energy's GREET model. And Continuum Ag has integrated that GREET model into our software at topsoil.ag. Carbon intensity is basically the carbon footprint per bushel. Think of it as every single pass across the field has a carbon footprint because we're burning diesel fuel. Fertilizers have a big carbon footprint. Pesticides have a carbon footprint, so on and so forth. Every pass across the field divided by the yield that we're getting off of that field. So it's the carbon footprint per bushel. Those bushels then get converted into ethanol or biodiesel, and that bushel's carbon footprint becomes that gallon's carbon footprint. We're talking about the biofuel space because that's where the tax credits are. It's called Section 45Z. It was part of the Inflation Reduction Act. We don't have the exact rules yet. There's supposed to be some rules coming very soon, especially rules about kind of a sister tax code called 40B. 40B is specifically for sustainable aviation fuel and only for production in 2023 and 2024. There were supposed to be some rules come out on March 1. It's delayed. I was just talking with one of my guys at the Environmental Defense Fund yesterday, and he's saying very similar to what we were hearing a couple weeks ago. He's saying it's getting very close, but I don't know when. For sure should be in the next couple weeks. So still very open-ended, not getting a lot of really great definitive answers, but they are making some progress anyway, and it's supposed to be coming out here soon. I'll share some more on that. But 40B for sustainable aviation fuel, and they're going to use the brand new updated version of the GREET model. It's supposed to come out at any time. And at the end of the year, sustainable aviation fuel moves from being under 40B, because that one sunsets, and they'll be under 45Z. So that's why I call it kind of a sister credit, or just kind of a good indicator for what's going to happen with 45Z. We continue to spread the word like crazy. Update on our billion bushel challenge. We are over 160 million bushels. It has been absolutely bonkers, absolutely on track to go after this billion bushel mark. That's been our target here for the 2024 season. Continue to spread awareness. Get your CI score at topsoil.ag. Everyone just needs to be aware of what their score is, and that score brings value to the ethanol plants. This is one of the main things I wanted to really preach on here today. A lot of ethanol plants, a lot of crush facilities are learning who we are. My name is being thrown around a lot, which is great. I love it. but we got to make sure that we go about this correctly, and apologize for any of the biofuel folks who are on this or who are receiving the recording if some of what we've said has been taken out of context. What I mean by that is we only know the total potential value of the tax credit, right? It is 2 cents per point reduced per gallon. And conservatively, when we convert that from gallons to bushels, we take that 2 cents times 2.7, because every ethanol plant is a little bit different. And when a bushel of corn goes in, anywhere from 2.7 to 3 gallons of ethanol come out. And some ethanol plants are even better than that. So we try to be as conservative as possible. We take the 2 cents per gallon times 2.7. That means every point is worth a potential value of 5.4 cents. But that's a potential value to the ethanol plant, or the potential value of the tax credit, not the value to the farmer. But today, all we know is the potential value of the tax credit. We don't know what the farmer cut is going to be. We don't know the details of the tax credit. None of the ethanol plants have definitively come out saying what they're going to share with farmers. The range, though, is that there's some plants today paying 2 cents per bushel just for the data. And there's some companies that are saying that they're going to cover their cost, but give the farmers 100% of the tax credit after they get their costs covered. So a massive spectrum here of what we could end up seeing for a farmer payment. But by and large, especially farmers on here, this is about us helping our biofuel friends. This is about us being able to utilize our low carbon farming practices, utilize our data to create these credits. This is not a farmer tax credit. This is not a corn tax credit. It's not a beef tax credit. It's a transportation biofuel tax credit. So what we've got to make sure that we're doing, because obviously some of this has been taken out of context, this is not about us going to the ethanol plant saying, hey, we know our scores, you've got to pay us for them and pay us top dollar for them. We know that it's worth however much. On my farm, my score's worth as much as $1.92 per bushel. I'm not going to get $1.92. I'm not going to get anywhere close to $1.92. And I've never said that I'm going to get close to anywhere close to $1.92. I'm hoping that I get a halfway decent chunk of that for doing the work and doing the practices and taking on the risk of CI certification. But I know that I'm not going to see a penny without the ethanol plant. They're not going to see a penny if the IRS puts out the rules and they're incorrect, which that's the biggest risk. We still don't know the rules. We still don't know the updated version of the GREET model, which might just kill us from a corn-based ethanol perspective based on this notion of indirect land use change. I can explain that more if folks want to, but I still am communicating with the ethanol companies and as many of them as I can, saying, I've got low carbon corn. A lot of other farmers have low carbon corn. We want to help you guys to capitalize on these tax credits. That's what this is about. Farmers rising to the call, helping our biofuel friends to lower their carbon intensity and capitalize on these tax credits as much as possible. Today, the corn contributes to more than 50% of the carbon footprint of biofuel, of ethanol. So since we're more than 50% of the footprint, we've got to solve our problems here and be able to lower our scores. I mentioned Continuum Ag has scored over 160 million bushels already, and the average CI score today is 10.6. 10.6. That's like almost a 20-point reduction from the default or from the baseline. That 20-point reduction is worth as much as 40 cents a gallon to the ethanol plant. Now, once they get in the money, so that's why it's always as much as 40 cents a gallon. Every single ethanol plant is going to have a little bit different financial opportunity because they're all starting from a different CI baseline score, and they aren't in the money until their score gets below 50. So again, it's about us as farmers saying, biofuel friends, we want to help you. We can organize ourselves. We can get our data pulled together. We can get it verified for you. And we want to help you to capitalize on these tax credits. Hopefully there's enough money to go around for all of us, but we know today there's nothing. No money. Won't be any money anytime soon. We have no idea when the IRS is going to get the rules put together. And yeah, we're waiting on the government here, which really is not fun, because already they're missing deadlines. But all we can really do at this point, all I can guarantee is I can guarantee nobody will make any money if we don't have data. Farmers, you won't make nothing if you don't have your data, because what are we trying to claim? The IRS needs to see and will absolutely audit these ethanol plants. They need to see the data. They need to have proof that these tax credits are real, the carbon reductions are real, and that starts on the farm. We've got to have our data, and that's why Continuum Ag is going after this right now. Now, we are asking that farmers, but it costs us money to do this stuff. I would love to do it all for free. I would love to give it to every single farmer, but I can't. We have bills to pay, and the verification, all this, like, it costs real money. So we're asking $5 an acre, $5 an acre to get your data organized, to get it verified, all the scores, everything that you need. Is it a risk? Absolutely. It's a $5 risk. Don't know if it's going to pay, but there's a lot of other options out there too, like carbon insetting programs or other sustainability programs. There's more ways to get return on investment than only this 45Z carbon intensity thing. Say it all falls apart, we got to go to plan B and go to some of those backup options. We've already proven that that's real, and got a lot of farmers involved in some of those programs last year, made them some serious money. So there's other options out there, but no matter what, it's about getting our data organized, especially as we get really busy with planting here in the next couple of weeks. We want to get going on it now. We want to get organized and make sure that we're ahead of the ball. We're already a little bit behind. We need to document everything that we did last fall, everything that we're going to be doing this spring, and that's what the $5 goes for. Is it a risk? Yes, but so is spending money on crop insurance that you don't know if that's going to pay. Spending money on the newest, most expensive hybrid, you don't know if that one's going to be the best yielding or the cheaper one. Spending money on fungicide, a biological, everything. You know, farmers, we know this. We're spending money up front, paying retail prices to hopefully make some money at the end of the year, selling wholesale. Right? I don't know exactly how this is going to work out, but I know for me, it's too big of an opportunity to not jump on it. And hopefully it ends up being the right move for all of us. That I do think that there's going to be opportunities out there, but like our buddy Matt was just saying too, it's got to kind of have our data organized. Last year we did some of these programs rushing and doing that at the last minute. We're not going to do that this year. We've got to have boundaries. We've got to have the data organized, put together. And our job here at Continuum Ag is, our mission is to help 1 million farmers profit from improving their soil health. It's not to help 1 million farmers get paid with carbon intensity scores on 45Z. It's not to get 1 million farmers, to spend money and to enroll in a program. No, our mission here is to help 1 million farmers profit from improving their soil health. Hopefully CI works out and it's 45Z, because I think it could be some real opportunity for our biofuel friends and for our real communities, and some of that money going to us on the farm. But no matter what, this world is obviously going in a data-driven direction. Farmers are at the heart of all of these different supply chains. We've got to be working on this, getting our data organized, getting our data put together, because that is what creates value. Any of these companies that want to make claims with our outcomes, it takes data. And that's where we can start. It's really about, it's kind of the only thing that we can control from the farmer side right now. We can control where our data goes. We can control who owns it, which in this case, the farmer owns it. That's why we built our own software as farmers. And we can control getting organized and getting it ready to go. So anyway, that's my rant here this morning. And again, some of these ethanol companies, guys, are they're worried about, over promising and under delivering. And I can't promise anything. All I can promise is there definitely will be nothing if you don't have data. That's what it boils down to. Hopefully there's some awesome opportunities. Hopefully this all happens the way that we want it to. You guys that are on this and paying attention and on this early, I think there can be some serious money to be had, but it's about sharing. None of us are going to get a penny without our friends at the biofuel plants. Biofuel plants need our data, and we got to help them get it organized. So Anyway, enough of that rant. Hopefully, my point there is made. So, question coming in from David. Came in using our code. We have a link that you can ask a question anytime. Go to continuum.ag. We've got a CI Chit Chat page. If you have any questions, submit them there. We'll go through them. David's asking, corn only, what about soybean crushers? What if a few loads? Okay, so there's multiple parts to this question. So corn only, what about soybean crushers? Soybeans also tie into this tax credit. This is a transportation biofuel tax credit. I mostly talk about corn because the math is really open and transparent and fairly easy. 2 cents per point per gallon multiplied by the conservative number of 2.7 gallons per bushel. And there's real money that adds up really fast. So we mostly focus on that. However, soybeans, this absolutely plays for soybeans as well. It's a little bit more complicated because it's got to go from the soybean to the crush plant, then to the biofuel refiner. So there's an extra step in there. But we absolutely have got to get our CI scores put together for soybeans. The tax credits are still there. We want to get soybeans scored and verified as well. His question, what if a few loads don't fit in the bin, but they go straight to the ethanol plant? When will the ethanol plants be signed up? Right now, it's kind of hopes and dreams, but seems better than other carbon programs. And he says that he thinks it's better than the rest. I agree. I mean, we're still waiting for the guidelines, and I mean, I'm getting some kind of nasty comments here from public folks on trying to bamboozle farmers, trying to sell a bunch of hopes and dreams and selling something that's not real. This was signed into law in August of 2022. I don't know how much more, like that's pretty real. That's the law, but whatever. We don't know the exact rules yet. However, we know that it's the GREET model. We know how the math works for our biofuel friends. What we don't know is exactly some of the details. So none of them have come out fully definitively with any programs. I don't think there will be any announcements of any definitive programs until this summer at the earliest. I don't know when the rules are going to come out. So none of these definitive programs are going to happen until we get the rules. So again, all we can do at this time is organize our data and encourage our biofuel friends that we're ready to help them. We've got low carbon grain. We're ready to help them out. They have to move the weighted average significantly to make this work. So we've got to have a massive volume of bushels ready to go. Because the credit starts in 2025, David's asking, do we need to be storing until 2025? And that's probably not a bad idea. Be storing it. If some of the crop goes straight to town from the field, if you don't have storage, if you don't have enough storage, if you have some that already marketed to go to town straight out of the field, there might be some premiums on that if companies are going to hold on to that crop and carry it until December. I would assume that we're going to see piles of low carbon corn to be utilized in January of 2025 or later. And companies need to get low carbon corn in the bins on December 31 in order to be producing low carbon fuel on January 1. So we don't know how soon these programs are going to roll out or what some of those premiums could be in Q4. But we know that if companies are going to start producing low carbon fuel on January 1, they've got to have low carbon corn on December 31 and the weeks previous to that. So assuming that there's going to be folks physically aggregating those low carbon bushels, whether that be at the co-op, the elevator, or even the ethanol plants, trying to get this low carbon grain organized. But at this point, we're saying, hey, keep your options open in terms of your keep your options open in terms of grain marketing, seeing guys, buying some options and stuff like that, making sure that we've got opportunities out there. But still, it's about getting that data organized to create any type of value. So, okay, Dennis in the chat. Any additional questions? Put them in the chat or raise your hand. Definitely hop in. But Dennis asking, are there any ethanol plants that are starting to convert to SAF, or are they waiting to hear back from the rules? Okay, Dennis, I love that you brought this up. Okay, so here's another one of my kind of rants that I've been going on here recently. So rant number one, farmers, this is not us going to the ethanol plants demanding that we get paid all this money because Mitch Hora says that this tax credit's worth a lot. That is a bad idea. The tax credit is not worth anything to the farmer. The tax credit is for the ethanol plant. We just want to help them, not demand that we're going to get paid a whole bunch of money. If they're making money and they're able to share some of that with us, that's what this is going to be about. One of the long-term opportunities is alcohol to jet, right? One of the equations is ethanol being converted into sustainable aviation fuel. And that's what 40B is about. And also 45Z will take over and allow for sustainable aviation fuel to fall under 45Z. There's big tax credits and huge opportunity. The problem is, because the GREET model has not been released yet, US ethanol does not have a carbon intensity score low enough to be converted into sustainable aviation fuel. By definition, sustainable aviation fuel has a carbon intensity score at least 50% lower than regular petro jet fuel, okay? 50% lower carbon footprint. Our ethanol today still has a relatively high carbon intensity score, and we're waiting for the new GREET model to be released to dial in that score. So since there isn't a GREET model for sustainable aviation fuel today, they have to use other models, which gives US ethanol a very high carbon intensity score. So today, US ethanol is not able to be converted into sustainable aviation fuel because of that carbon intensity score being too high and the models not being robust enough. So what is going into sustainable aviation fuel today is Brazilian ethanol. Brazilian sugarcane ethanol being shipped up to, there's a facility in Georgia. It's a small pilot size, demonstration size of facility, but they are bringing Brazilian ethanol into our US market, converting it into sustainable aviation fuel and getting these tax credits using Brazilian ethanol. And the only thing that's stopping this from being a US opportunity is people in Washington, D.C. arguing about the rules and arguing about the updated GREET model and not fulfilling their promises to actually get their stuff together. Brazilian ethanol has a really low carbon intensity score just because of some of how these models are put together. And like for corn-based ethanol, for example, really low CI score because it's their secondary crop. They do the soybean crop first, then they do that secondary crop of corn. And because it's a secondary crop, it's got a super low carbon intensity score. That's just how the rules are written, right? But because it's got that super low carbon intensity score, they're able to participate in some of these markets like California, low carbon fuel market, the European low carbon fuel markets. Now they might get dinged when the no deforestation rules come into play, but today they're able to participate in that market and they're able to utilize low carbon Brazilian ethanol into our sustainable aviation fuel markets. We have got to get our policymakers. Most of this is in the executive branch, right? This is Department of Energy, IRS, Department of Ag. These folks have got to get organized here to actually stick up for the American farmers, stick up for American energy, because right now the way that they have the rules written, they are incentivizing Brazilian biofuels to come in for our U.S. markets, basically penalizing farmers in the U.S. because of the way that these rules are written, while farmers in Brazil can continue to do whatever they want to do. And because it's a secondary crop, they have their super low CI scores. It just really, really frustrating that we've got to get some of these rules out and in a common sense manner to reflect the reality of our actual carbon footprint and how the world works. So, all right, let me get through a couple of these other ones here. Sorry, I've been ranting a bunch today, but hopefully this is making some sense. Does the ethanol plant need to buy the corn to get the tax credit? Yeah. So Jeff, essentially what we're doing here is every single bushel of corn has a CI score. Okay. So what we're doing is every load, right? Every load has a scale ticket. And on that scale ticket will be the CI score. That CI score will be either the county default. For Washington County, Iowa, it's 29.4. A lot of times we talk about 29.1 as a typical kind of score, but every county has a default. So every load that we sell is either the default or it's the real score. And in order to be the real score, Continuum Ag helps you to put your CI score on the scale ticket along with the verification ID. That it has been verified, it's legit, and if it gets audited additionally, we can track back to that verification report that our third-party verifier creates. So we are talking about replacing the default CI score with the farmer actual score, and in doing so, we have low carbon bushels that go into low carbon fuel to create these tax credits. In order for the ethanol company to buy that corn and buy that data, they've got to share, right? They got to share a little bit of that money because it's the farmers' practices that are lowering the carbon footprint of the bushel, and in turn lowering the carbon footprint of the gallon. So we've got to have some sharing there, but we've got a little bit of time between now and harvest to get all of that fully worked out. So, Myron, how long does it take for a CI score from our site? Entered info Sunday. Myron, it's automatic in the system. So if you go to topsoil.ag, do the farm profile, then you can click on view my CI score. If you haven't unlocked it, there typically is a $500 paywall on it, right? We just have that to help to cover some more costs, but in creating real value for the farmers. But all of you that are on here, my personal discount code, if you want 99% off on your CI score, use code CA99 when you check out, or for $5. So on, as long as you have your farm profile all the way put together, and the orange button at the bottom allows you to click it and save that farm profile, you'll be able to run your carbon intensity score. Use code CA99 for 99% off on the score. Tap refresh if you need to refresh the software, but the scores run automatically. Shouldn't take any time at all. Should if it's working correctly, should go right there. Shoot me a note or an email, or hit up Jessica at continuum.ag. She can help out here as well, or some of the rest of my folks. Thanks, Diana, putting that in there. So, okay, a couple last things here. Jeff, has Congress passed a bill to fund 45Z or 40B? Which bills do that? So, Jeff, this is not a spending package. Now, what they have to do, though, is they have to allocate a cap on these tax credits. So that gets done and will be noted in the tax expenditures database. So this is not taxpayer money being paid to the ethanol plants. Instead, this is tax credits, not a direct expense in the federal ledger, but a reduction of their income, where they're not going to get cash in terms of federal income tax, but companies are utilizing these tax credits to lower their tax liability. So there should not be any direct spending bill that's needed, but there is updates that are needed on the tax expenditures database. So once we get some of the rules from the IRS, then the legislature's got to update that tax expenditure database. It's not been done, but it's a different kind of process versus sending using an actual bill. But we're still waiting for it, though, Jeff. So if we get penalized, Josh is saying, so if we get penalized for indirect land use change, why aren't Brazilian farmers getting hammered for deforesting the Amazon? This is a whole rabbit hole to go down, right, Josh? But the way that the rules are written today, they don't necessarily get penalized for deforestation because they are growing a soybean crop, and that soybean crop is basically bearing the impact in these models of the change of land, right, from being set aside or being rainforest. Now the soybean crop is taking on that impact in its calculation. Since the corn crop is a secondary crop, it doesn't bear that same impact. It's able to have a super low CI score because it's a secondary crop. But here in the US, we're getting penalized for indirect land use change, even though we're actually losing agricultural land in the US at a very rapid rate. We have not added new land into production at a massive rate because of biofuels, but the way that the indirect land use change provision works right now is all U.S. corn-based ethanol gets a knock for indirect land use change. Today, it's about 7 points, 7.5, 7.7 points for every single, at the gallon level. That 7 some points is already factored in. In other models, they dock corn-based ethanol by as much as 25 points for indirect land use change. So the argument is knocking everybody's CI scores worse by some factor in the middle between 7 and 25. Hopefully it's not close to that 25 number, or else all this is just not going to happen. It's going to require the pipelines are put in. None of the on-farm stuff will really matter because our scores will be so far from 50 that it would take basically 100% farmer participation, or at least 50% farmer participation. It would be at least 50% farmer participation for pretty much every ethanol plant that I've run the scenarios for. It would be really tough to be able to get everybody organized and ready to go for the farmers to move the needle enough to get below 50. Again, basically would require that the carbon capture and storage systems be implemented in order to move the score enough. Really frustrating that, it does basically allow for this low carbon fuel to be produced from other places around the world that don't have some of these regulations, that don't have these folks that are creating rules and stipulations. They're able to go do, other places around the world are able to go do whatever they want to do, and American farmers get penalized, even though we're not actually converting land from set aside and putting it into cropland for biofuels, at least by and large. What I do think should happen, though, last little bit on this, is if we are going to be tracking indirect land use change, do it at the field level, just like the CI scores. Do it at the field level. If a field is in fact taken out of forest, or taken out of set aside, or taken out of perennial cover and put into corn ground, yeah, for sure, knock it for land use change, but just penalizing the industry flat across the board, I think is a bad strategy. Okay, last one here from Greg. Is the ethanol company eligible for any tax credits for non-CI scored corn, say down to the default? So Greg, how it'll work is that default score, usually around 29, it's not going to help them to lower their CI score enough to get in the money. So most ethanol plants today that I've been chatting with have CI scores anywhere from, usually most of them are like 52, 53, up to like 57, 58. Some of them are a little bit worse. Some of them are a little bit better. But by and large, call it an average of 55. An ethanol company buying only non-scored corn, all that corn is going to be at 29, not creating any reductions, 29 or whatever the default is, right? So that corn that's at the default, it's not creating any reduction. Therefore, the gallon is still at 55. Therefore, they're not getting their score lower and getting in the money, which is that they got to get below 50, and then they earn up to 2 cents per point per gallon as they lower from 50. So just the default scores doesn't move the needle, doesn't create any value. So farmers delivering non-scored corn, they don't create any value. They're not going to get any value. It's farmers that are paying attention, getting their scores, getting it verified. That's how we can help our biofuel friends to capitalize on this opportunity, bring these dollars to our rural communities, strengthen U.S. energy, and do it in a low carbon manner, driven by our soil health practices. So anyway, a couple pretty good rants in there. Hopefully that helped everybody, though. Appreciate the questions. Appreciate you spending the time here this Tuesday morning. And we'll see you again next Tuesday. Last kind of thing, the Topsoil Summit, June 3rd. Our ethanol plants teaching growers is done. Very few ethanol plants are talking about this. It's really, that's why I'm like pushing it so much. Okay, so we've got to get more ethanol plants talking about this. But the problem is they don't have the rules. That's why, as farmers, we need to spread the word, but not spread the word of false information about these big dollars. We don't know what the dollar is going to be. I talk about the math, and here is how the math works. And we need to know that there could be some big money to be had here. But it's not money for the farmer. It's money for the biofuel plants that we're helping them to go get these tax credits. And in turn, hopefully some of that goes to our family farms. But very few ethanol plants talk about this. They've had a couple meetings, a couple ethanol plants are having conversations, but by and large, not talking about this much. So we're taking it upon ourselves to keep spreading the word. But anyway, we're going to talk about a lot more June 3rd down here in Southeast Iowa. Got some big announcements for some awesome guests that are coming, some big time speakers, some people that I'm like, holy smokes, this was never even on our radar when I started this company, 9 years ago. But exciting to see the folks come to the table. Anyway, I got to go. Appreciate everybody, and we'll see you next week.